I'll do my best to talk for the next 10 minutes or so about the ritual dimensions of Eastern Christian traditions. And that's a big topic within 10 minutes, but I'll try to give you some points at least toward how I approach the topic and how I understand us to approach it here at Sankt Ignatios. Just a word about myself. I'm a member of the Orthodox Church of Finland. I did my doctoral work at the University of Notre Dame in liturgical studies, focused on early Christian liturgy and early Christian history. I have a degree in comparative religion from Harvard, and then I studied Syriac literature and language at Oxford for a while as well. All of this is just to say I've got a lot of different interests, and I continue to have them, particularly in the Eastern Christian liturgical traditions. Now, I suppose the basic question is, why is ritual important? This is a basic question of modernity, I think. One of the features that the anthropologist Mary Douglas claimed about the age we live in, the age of modernity, is that it is anti-ritual in orientation. That is to say, as modernity's critique of revealed authority, whether that be a holy book, a holy minister, a holy institution, came into play. One of the features of that critique as well was the critique of a holy way of practicing, as if there were some, in the terms of that day, in the 18th and early 19th century, the quasi-magical approach to religious practice. In an age of growing rationalism, religion, at least for those who advocated a rationalist approach to religion, came to be seen largely in terms of the life of the mind and ethics, rather than practices which, at least in a Protestant critique of liturgy, were seen as vestiges of a corrupted Christianity that had fallen away from its pure existence prior to the Constantinian peace in the 4th century. Excuse me. That's one approach to Christian ritual practice, to be sure. However, that's been largely discredited in the past 75, 80 years, as scholars have seen, rather, that ritual practice itself is far more than simply a manifestation of superstition, but rather ritual practice, however one wishes to define it. And actually, ritual is a difficult phenomenon to define. If you look at the literature, you see about as many different definitions of ritual as there are ritual scholars. But in all cases, they stress the importance of ritual practice to human society, to the human individual, and ways of approaching the relationships between the person, the created order, or the natural order, and whatever they consider to be transcendent or beyond themselves or deeply within themselves. I've actually, I want to quote just briefly one definition of ritual, which comes from the great scholar of ritual, Catherine Bell, who died far too young. And if I can just read this really quickly, I'm just going to read it rather than put it up on the screen. Bell, who died in 2018, and whose books are extremely important to anyone who's interested in the subject of ritual. She noted in one place, and this is in an article she wrote on ritual for the Blackwell Companion to the Study of Religion. She says, ritual has been described as an encounter between imagination and memory, translated into the physical acts of the body. And I just want to read that again. An encounter between imagination and memory, translated into the physical acts of the body. And I think what this definition does is it emphasizes the role of not only the historical memory of a community, it's the history of the community, its ritual memory in terms of its relationship to its sacred writings, to its sacred history, but also the role of the relationship between that history and imagination. That is to say, not in the sense of something made up, but rather in the sense of the human faculty to use heart and mind to embrace what any given religious tradition says is true about the world, about human beings, about God, and to manifest that encounter in actual practices. That is to say, how our bodies do things in the world in a way that manifests that relationship between tradition and imagination, if you will, or history and memory and imagination. Different Christian traditions have different approaches to the issue of their ritual life. All Christian traditions have a ritual life. It's important to say this at the outset, because even in those traditions that are most vehemently opposed to a text-based ritual practice, there's still a ritual structure. You can look at it, you can analyze it, you can tease out its theological, ethical, um, anthropological implications. For Eastern Christian traditions, this ritual life is extremely rich and all-embracing in terms of a believer's life, so that one has not only, the Sunday service, as many Christian traditions have, but also services for other occasions, the marking of sacred time, the negotiation of life cycle events like birth, marriage, illness, and death. So Eastern Christian traditions in their ritual lives have classically embraced the human experience, if you will, in an all-encompassing way. Now, what has happened, however, of course, and this is why I mentioned modernity, is that as Eastern Christian traditions themselves come to live in this era, you want to call it late modernity, what have you, those very ways in which the ritual dimensions of Eastern Christian life have played out, have manifested themselves in previous centuries, have come to change. They've come to experience, as much as any other Christian tradition, the challenges of modern life. And so that Eastern Christians, like other Christians, find themselves negotiating their very identity as modern people, as well as Eastern Christian adherents, believers. And so we find today that there is a tension between holding on to and living out the very rich ritual life of Eastern Christian traditions, while at the same time negotiating that life in the context of the modern world. And this is a task that the Eastern Christian traditions themselves recognize and wrestle with, as do all Christian traditions. If I may say so, one of the good things about studying at Sankt Ignatios is that you have the chance to study the various dimensions of the ritual life that's so central to an Eastern Christian understanding of what it means to be a Christian. Everything from the Sunday service itself, the ritual meal of the Eucharist, or Holy Communion, or the Divine Liturgy, or the Qurbana, or the various names that we have for or Kadase, for this rite, that ritual meal together, to the ritual bath that initiates one into the church, baptism, with everything else that it includes, from preparation through the water bath itself to being anointed, to receiving the meal of the Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ, as Eastern Christians understand it. Liturgies of confessing sin, of marriage, of burial, of anointing when you're sick, of confessing and getting forgiveness. All of these are living realities in Eastern Christian churches. And again, we have courses that address all of these. And so you can learn um, the complexities of each tradition's ritual repertoire, if you will, and how the ritual life um, of Eastern Christians today come to be lived out in our own age. And so, this is really not a topic that's amenable to words so much as it is to images and music. Um, and so I regret not being able to share with you here in this short presentation a wide range of images, and not only beginning with icons, of course, um, but continuing with architecture and music and the very ways in which uh, Eastern Christian rituals themselves choreograph the movement of human bodies in sacred space. And we could talk about pilgrimage too. But I mean, all of this ultimately has to do with a vision of the world. It's no accident that in the Byzantine tradition, a highly developed symbolism around the very organization of liturgical space developed. Certainly before iconoclasm, but even after as well, in which the Byzantine temple comes to be seen as a microcosm of the universe. It's no surprise. This is true for other Eastern Christian traditions as well. The human person, the liturgical person, is understood, to be a microcosm in and of herself or himself. The way in which we relate to God in liturgy, Eastern Christians, broadly speaking, understand as a image of how we relate to the created world and to other people. So this is why the ritual dimensions of Eastern Christian traditions are so critical to understand. And ultimately, they have to be experienced. Now, as somebody who teaches Eastern Christian liturgical traditions here, um, I face a challenge in that our teaching is rightly and properly online for anyone who wants it. At the same time, the question of how we get people to experience the different liturgical traditions that make up the student body and faculty of Sankt Ignatios and the Department of Eastern Christian Studies, that's a challenge. You can do that, of course, with YouTube videos and recordings and so forth, but there's nothing like actually participating in person in a service. And of course, that raises questions about, how one acts if you're not a member of that tradition and so forth. But that's all part of it. That's what it takes to learn. As a famous book puts it, how to be a perfect stranger. To learn how to learn what it means to be in somebody else's house. So these are the things that we try to learn here at Sankt Ignatios. And I invite you warmly to come and learn about these traditions. And I could say it's an enriching thing and one that will increase your understanding, I think, not only of Eastern Christian traditions, but also any tradition to which you might belong. Thank you very much.